From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. American language experts have chosen they as the 2015 Word of the Year. The American Dialect Society, or ADS, voted on the issue at a conference in Washington. They is a plural pronoun. For years, people speaking English have used it as a singular pronoun. For example, I am meeting a friend for coffee, and I hope they are not late. The correct use, however, is as a third-person plural pronoun. For example, when I meet my school friends for coffee, they are always late. Ben Zimmer writes about language for the Wall Street Journal. He says there has been a lot of debate recently about something that has been in our language for centuries. He explains that English does not have a third-person singular pronoun that does not identify as male or female. Zimmer says that more and more, they is being used to replace the traditional phrase, he or she. For example, they is used for people who identify as transgender. When former Olympic athlete Bruce Jenner took a female identity last year, he changed his name to Caitlyn Jenner. The new use of they would replace he, and the word their would replace his. For example, they changed their name to Caitlyn Jenner. ADS President Alan Metcalf says, people have argued about the use of a singular they for more than 100 years. And he says, 100 years from now, people will still be debating it. Metcalf says the decision for the Word of the Year is not based on science. Instead, he says, the ADS chooses from words that express the concerns and stories of the past year. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ana Mateo.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. A United Nations study says almost 24 million children around the world are unable to attend school because of conflict. The United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, studied 22 countries affected by conflict. The UN agency found that nearly 1 in 4 of the more than 109 million kids of primary and lower secondary school age who live in conflict zones are missing out on their education. Lisa Bender is an education specialist with UNICEF. She says not only are more children affected by conflict, but conflicts are lasting longer. She adds that children are missing important years for learning. The results, Bender says, are that children are not able to get the skills they need to survive. These include both day-to-day living skills and long-term skills needed to become future teachers, doctors, and leaders. If children grow up without these skills, Bender says, countries suffer in the long term. Economies and public health could worsen, while girls become more vulnerable to sex abuse. Conflicts are fueling huge population movements in some areas, including the Middle East. Syria is the country largely driving Europe's migrant and refugee crisis. Lisa Bender says Syria once had most of its boys and girls in school. Now, she says, it is difficult to get information. UNICEF says in South Sudan, over half of the children, 51%, are out of school. Niger and Sudan are also near the top of the list. UNICEF says Afghanistan has made progress, but 40% of its children still are out of school. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
For VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Scientists say they have found evidence of a giant planet in the solar system. It is very far away from Earth. The possible new planet, called Planet 9, is about 10 times the size of Earth. If scientists are right, this would be the 9th planet in our solar system. Pluto had been considered the 9th planet until 2006, when it was renamed a dwarf planet. Konstantin Batygin and Mike Brown made the Planet 9 discovery. The scientists are with the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech. They used mathematical modeling and computer programs to find the planet. Batygin and Brown published their findings in the Astronomical Journal. They said Planet 9 travels a strange orbit in the solar system. They said it would take the planet 10,000 to 20,000 years to make one full orbit around the sun. Confirmation of a 9th planet would be very big news. Mike Brown said that there have only been 2 true planets discovered since ancient times, and this would be a 3rd. The researchers did not get a picture of Planet 9 yet, but they said they are using the biggest and best telescopes on Earth to find it. They want to discover more about Planet 9's orbit and its impact on the outer part of our solar system. Robert Massey is with the Royal Astronomical Society in London. He told the news agency, AFP, that planets have been predicted before and then were not found. But he said the work of these researchers is definitely worth following up, even though at the moment it is still just a prediction. For VOA Learning English, I'm Anna Mateo. Hello, my name is Anna Mateo. I am from a small town. It is nice, but there is no good job for me. Goodbye, small town, and hello, Washington, D.C. I want to learn about Washington. You want to learn English. Let's learn together. Let's learn English. For VOA Learning English, this is the health report. When you are sick with a cold or the flu, You may have a runny nose. Why is it called a runny nose? It is because a substance called mucus flows and drips from it. Just hearing the word is enough to make some people uneasy. But science tells us mucus is our friend. New research finds there are health benefits from mucus and viruses. Our bodies can produce more than a liter of mucus every day. Jeremy Barr is a professor at San Diego State University. He says that mucus is where all of your good bacteria lives and grows. When you have a virus, it can cause many illnesses. Barr and his fellow researchers studied a virus called phage. He says this virus, when mixed with mucus cells in the body, can help protect against bacteria. He also says that phages are a special kind of virus. They only infect and kill bacteria. They do not infect humans or animals. His research shows that the phages stick to mucus layers all throughout your body. By staying there, they work to protect and control the bacteria that can live in your mucus layers. Mucus also helps protect your lungs from dust, bacteria, cigarette smoke, exhaust fumes, and other forms of pollution. Jeremy Barr says he hopes the research will help start new fields of phage research. They might even prevent food-related bacteria outbreaks like E. coli. So the next time you have a cold, remember your mucus, along with the phage virus, is hard at work. Together, they can block harmful bacteria and keep you healthy. For VOA Learning English, I'm Anna Mateo.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Russia's economy is struggling at the beginning of 2016. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev thinks the economy is looking better than it did 1 year ago. But he told a conference in January that Russia must prepare for the worst. Medvedev spoke in Moscow at the yearly Guider Forum on Economics. He said 2015 was probably the most difficult year for Russia economically in the past 10 years. The level of economic activity shrank 3.8% last year. Two main reasons for this were the sharp drop in the price of oil and Western economic sanctions. Oil is Russia's main export. Its price has dropped about 70% to $30 a barrel over the past 12 months. Western countries placed sanctions on Russia because of its 2014 takeover of Crimea. Russia also has continued its military support for rebels in eastern Ukraine. The Western measures have cut off Russian banks from international credit. The value of the ruble has dropped from a high of 30 to the US dollar to about 75. Inflation was a major concern for Russians last year. On average, prices increased at a rate of 15% in 2015. but consumer food prices increased between 20 and 30%. High inflation has hurt Russia's poor. The number of Russians below subsistence poverty rose to more than 20 million last year from 18 million a year earlier. Medvedev admitted the government would likely face budget cuts. About half of Russia's budget depends on oil export revenues. Observers say oil prices could drop further to $20 a barrel. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
For VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. British scientists say they have found the oldest known evidence of war. Researchers discovered the remains of 27 people during a dig near Lake Turkana in northern Kenya. Scientists say they believe the remains are from a Stone Age culture of about 10,000 years ago. The so-called Nataruk fossils show signs of a violent attack. The dig also uncovered weapons, including arrows, clubs, and stone blades. The scientists published a paper on their findings in the journal Nature. Marta Mirazón-Lar was the lead investigator. She studies human ancestors at the University of Cambridge in Britain. She wrote that the victims were people who hunted, fished, and gathered plants for food. She described the 10,000-year-old battle in which they were killed as a brutal attack. One skeleton was found with a blade of volcanic glass still stuck in his head. A woman in late pregnancy appeared to have been bound by her hands and feet. The bodies were not buried after their death. Some had fallen into water that has since dried up. Their bones were protected by the Earth's soil. Many experts had thought war did not begin until humans started to form settled communities. But the Nataruk people were hunter-gatherers of an earlier period. They moved from place to place in search of food. Scientist Lar said the findings raise the question of whether warfare has been part of the human experience for much longer than previously thought. The remains include 21 adults and 6 children. Most of the children were younger than 6. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ana Mateo.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Attacks from Boko Haram militants are hurting the economies of Chad and northern Cameroon. The militants often attack trucks bringing goods to the Central African nations. Some of the goods come from Borno State in nearby Nigeria. Borno State is currently under the control of the Islamist militants. Nafisa Aja works at one of the most popular stores in N'Djamena, the capital of Chad. She says the store has not received supplies from Borno State for several months. Business is slow because of the attacks on the trucks that transport supplies. Tuk Bahaman is a truck driver. He says he no longer goes to Nigeria for supplies because Boko Haram targets trucks and kills drivers. Abdul Saeed works as a customs official in Chad. He says Boko Haram recently attacked trucks in Gambaro, a Nigerian town on the border with Cameroon. He says Boko Haram fighters have attacked and seized many vehicles in recent weeks. Abba Kabir is a member of Cameroon's National Assembly. He says the economies of northern Cameroon and Chad are suffering because the militants control the roads in Nigeria. Simple goods and manufactured products like telephones and farming tools enter Chad on these roads. He says if Boko Haram continues to control the border roads, economic activity will continue to be weak in Chad, northern Cameroon, and parts of northeastern Nigeria. He says he and others are calling on the military to stop the militants and their attacks. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. The population of Vietnam is growing old at the fastest rate of any nation in recorded history. In about 15 years, the share of Vietnamese citizens 65 and older will expand from 7% to 14% of the population. Victoria Qua is the World Bank's country director for Vietnam. She says there will be a slowing down and shrinking of the Vietnamese labor force in the future. She says this will create increasing demands on the people who do work. Low-cost labor has supported businesses in Vietnam. Qua says it is the only country in East Asia where economic growth was higher in 2015 than 2014. But the aging labor force is a threat to that growth. For many years, Vietnam has been a country of money savers. But now, household debt there is growing. Rafe Matthias is managing director of Infocus Mekong Research. He says the company found that 30% of Vietnamese consumers took out a loan in 2015. He says that Vietnam is becoming a culture of debt. Many countries are worried about how China's economic problems could hurt them. But Vietnam may not be affected. Vietnamese officials say the country's exports to Europe or the United States are about 2 times more than its exports to China. Vietnamese relations with China have worsened recently over territorial disputes in the South China Sea. But that has not stopped Vietnam from buying more products from China than from any other trading partner. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, This is the Education Report. Electronic devices called world readers have been helping students learn for 5 years now. Tens of thousands of the free electronic devices have been provided to students, teachers, and libraries in 12 African countries. They include Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. The digital collection includes about 30,000 books in 40 languages. David Risher is a former advertising chief at Microsoft and Amazon. He helped create and is president of the nonprofit organization World Reader. Risher says the devices are increasing reading ability in the schools that have them. Naima Hassan is a student at the Kibera Girls Soccer Academy in Nairobi, Kenya. She and other high school students use world readers instead of individual school books. One e-reader can be loaded with hundreds of books. Naima says she can learn everything she wants. She dreams of becoming a television camera operator. She says the e-reader permits her to download a book about the subject. Clarice Akinyi is her teacher. She is pleased that Naima and others like her can do their own research. She says they can learn more than they ever could before. She says World Reader helps students increase their chances of going to university after high school. Electric power is undependable in many African countries. But David Risher says world readers can be charged using a solar power device at a school or library. Thousands of books in several languages are available at read.worldreader.org. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.